Okay, so here are all the points mounted on the arrows. So now what I'm going to be doing is just wrapping the points here. So start with this. It's really simple. You start off with this. I've got some fast flight here, and I just start wrapping. It's really simple. I'm just going to be wrapping around all the way to the end of the point. Okay. So I've come down to the end here. So I cut about 10 inches off the bottom. Make a little loop. Pass the end of the loop up and over. And then take this loop here and I start wrapping it around. If you can see, what I'm basically doing is moving the wraps from one side to the other side. If you can see. So once I've moved about 1/4 of an inch, bring the loose end up. And then bring the wraps back over. You can see. And once I get to the end, pull the loose end up. There it is. So now I go and I cut the loose ends. I'm going to be sealing the wraps here. I'm also going to be rust proofing the point. I'm going to be using some clear nail polish. I like using clear nail polish because, for one, it's inexpensive, it's easy to apply, and as long as you get one that has good resin or one that hardens well, it'll create a very protective coat over your wrappings. It also forms a coat over your broadhead so it doesn't rust. It's really simple. Just want to take it and just apply it liberally onto the wrapping. So then you also want to go ahead and paint it onto the broadhead. Alright, here we go. So now I'm just going to let this dry. And while this is drying, I'm going to be wrapping the other ones. So when I'm done with that, I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so once the nail polish is dried, what I usually do is I'll wrap the nocks here. That's just to keep the nocks from splitting and to really hold this together. So what I do is I take the same cord I used to lash the front, and I start my wrap about 1/4 inch from the end. If you can see, like that. Now what I do is I cut off about 1 foot of cord and I make a large loop. You can see I tuck the end of the loop under, so if you can see here, I've got, this is the end of my loop here, and I've tucked it underneath this wrap. You see right there. So now that I've come pretty much to the knock here, what I do is I finish up this wrap Make sure to tighten the end here. And then I take the loose end and I pull it through. Make sure you don't catch it on the knock or the other cord. And go tighten that up. And there it is. So I'll just go trim that. Trim the end. And then put a little bit of nail polish. There you go. So once this dries, I'm going to put feathers on this. Alright, so now that this is dry, I'm going to be putting feathers on this. Most of the time when I make arrows, I just do the feathers freehand. But I do like using this feather clamp. So I've got a feather in here, and I already have some fletching tape on here. I've got another video showing how to do that, and I'll link it below. Basically, I'm just going to put it on here. Now, what I like to do is, if you can see here, I don't know if you can see it, there's a tiny bit of runoff on the grain. Now if there's any runoff on your arrow, you want to make sure that when you put it on your bow, so I'm going to make this for me, so right-handed, you want to make sure that your first feather goes on in such a way that the arrow will be oriented with the runoff facing away from your hand and away from the bow. So in this case, the runoff is going to be going upward. So that means that I'm going to be putting my first feather on this side. So I just go ahead from the end, line it up, put my feather about an inch down from the knock end. Just line up the rear of the feather. And then drop it down. Press it down. There you go. So there's the first feather. So now I'm just going to go and put the other two feathers on here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so here I've gone ahead and put all the feathers on it. Now what I like to do is just take a little bit of super glue . I just put a little bit of glue on the fronts of all the feathers. And the rears of the feathers. And there you go. So there's one arrow ready to go. So I'm going to finish up the other arrows and I'll show you what those look like. Here are all the arrows finished up. We've got this one. Finally this one. What's kind of interesting is that these are all pretty well balanced, but these larger points, if I spin them, they have so much momentum that actually these two, if I spin them on a flat surface, they spin pretty well, just like a top. You can see, when you're installing the points, you also want to make sure that, whoops, don't do that, that they spin true. The only thing is I'm not sure if all this extra weight is going to ruin the flight or not. We'll see. Now that these are finished, all there is to do is to shoot them out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to put a final edge on these, make sure they're really sharp. And we're going to go shoot them at stuff.